Imagine this, a hand-sized forest on your windowsill, driftwood rising like a time-worn statue, moss breathing softly at its feet, and a shallow stone bowl catching a circle of light. On the fence, green bottles glow like small lanterns, and a ribbon of crushed glass whispers the shape of a stream. No designer budget, no big yard, just rescued pieces and a quiet idea. If your day needs a calm corner that feels discovered, not decorated, stay with me. I'll show you 25 tiny rustic moments you can build from driftwood, moss, stone, and a little bit of trash turned treasure. Welcome to Archon Aesthetic Studio, where scraps become sanctuaries and small spaces feel like stories. If you love upcycled, magical garden moments, you're in the right place. We post a new episode every week, so subscribe and ring the bell to catch the next chapter in this series. I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments so we can bring ideas closer to your climate and style. One, standing driftwood totem plus pebble halo. In the corner of a quiet garden, a single piece of driftwood stands like a guardian of memory. Weathered by tides and time, its surface bears lines as delicate as calligraphy, carved not by hand but by nature's patience. Around its feet, a simple halo of pebbles gathers, smooth, round stones whispering of rivers long traveled. Between them, moss begins its slow embrace, a soft green veil against the pale strength of wood. Seen from a distance, it feels like sculpture. Step closer, and it becomes something more intimate, almost human in its posture. Upright yet unpolished, it reminds us that beauty is not perfection but survival. The way wood continues to speak after storms, the way stones carry the echo of streams. In a garden, this totem anchors everything around it. The flutter of ferns, the drifting scent of flowers, the play of shadow and light. It is both monument and muse, humble yet commanding. A fragment of wilderness standing steady in a suburban yard, waiting to catch the gaze and still the breath. And as your eyes move from its crown to the moss at its base, the story quietly leads you toward the next corner of magic waiting to unfold. Two, Zen stone basin with moss skirt. There is a bowl in the garden that holds more than water. Carved from stone, it has collected rain and light in equal measure, its surface shimmering with the memory of passing clouds. Around the rim, a skirt of moss gathers like a soft shawl, drawing warmth from the bowl's cool body. Driftwood bridges one side, a gentle curve inviting eyes to linger and hands to trace the line between wood and rock. When you lean closer, you hear the quiet dialogue between elements. The whisper of a breeze on water, the sigh of moss under dew, the silent patience of stone. This basin does not ask for attention. It simply offers a pause, a place where time seems suspended. Children might see it as a pond for imaginary creatures. Older eyes might see a meditation mirror, reflecting how the world changes and stays the same. Such a simple object becomes a focal point, grounding the space with its weight and softness. It reminds us that serenity does not need scale, only intention. And as the light fades and the moss deepens, your gaze naturally drifts to the nearby glow, to the colored bottles in the shadows preparing to become lanterns. Three, backlit bottle lantern screen in a pallet frame. Between the shadows, a wall of light begins to glow. Green and amber bottles rest like jewels within a wooden frame, each lit from behind so that their colors deepen at dusk. A piece of pallet wood, once destined for disposal, is transformed into a lantern screen. The glass, rescued from recycling, now catches the warm breath of sunset and holds it a little longer. The effect is at once playful and profound. It brings to mind childhood jars of fireflies, the way a collection of humble things can become treasure in the right light. As the hours slip by, the bottles flicker, casting soft patterns on nearby stone and wood. Their glow attracts moths and memories alike, turning the smallest corner into an evening gathering place. Sitting beside this screen, you might find yourself inventing stories about the journeys each bottle took before arriving here, about oceans crossed, parties celebrated, hands held. This upcycled tapestry also serves as a frame for the space. Behind it, the garden remains mysterious. In front, it invites you closer. It is a window and a curtain, leaving enough to the imagination to be intriguing. And on the ground below, the glass pieces from old bottles glint like a dry riverbed, hinting at the next path of sparkle and flow. Four, mini dry stream from crushed bottles. Follow the hint of blue glinting on the ground, and you will find a river without water. Crushed glass from old bottles has been sifted and sorted into a winding stream bed that runs through your garden. Clear and cobalt, pale green and aquamarine. The colors flow from dark to light like the memory of water in summer. The surface shimmers in the sun and seems to glow on cloudy days, each piece catching the light as if it were holding a secret. A gnarled branch bridges the stream at one point, inviting you to pause and step across. Nearby, moss gathers along the banks, and small stones nestle like islands. It's a dry river, yes, but it holds movement in the mind. You can imagine rain running down the slope and along these glistening paths, or imagine a stream of stars fallen to earth. Children will trace it with their fingers, adults with their eyes, both traveling for a moment without leaving the ground. This upcycled pathway also gives the garden rhythm. It leads you from one corner to the next, connecting vignettes of moss and wood, light and shadow. As you follow the path to its end, your gaze lifts to the bench waiting in the shade, a place to sit and listen for water that isn't there, and to feel the passage of time. Five, Wabi-Sabi bench niche. There is a bench tucked into a shady nook that feels like an invitation to linger. A simple plank, worn smooth at the edges, spans between two old stones. Beside it, a driftwood stump rises like a twisted arm, its surface bleached and cracked from years in the elements. A linen cushion softens the seat, its natural fibers welcoming bare hands and bare feet. Moss creeps into the joints where would meet stone, and a low lantern waits to be lit when twilight falls. This is not perfection. This is comfort. Every grain and scar in the wood tells a different season, a story of summer rain and winter frost. When you sit, you can feel the difference between hardness and softness, between age and new growth. It slows you down. You might rest a book on your lap or simply rest your gaze on the garden. You notice the dry stream catching light nearby, the bottle wall glowing when evening comes. In a small yard, such a niche becomes the heart of the garden. It is where you return after planting seeds and watering moss. It is where you share tea with a friend, their elbows on the same weathered plank. From this pause, your eyes wander to the next creation, to the tripod of branches that supports the climbing ivy, inviting your imagination to reach upward. Six, Driftwood tripod trellis for ferns, ivy. Three branches meet overhead, lashed together with jute, and suddenly the garden has height. A driftwood tripod is born from a handful of sticks found along a riverbank, twisted, curved, and perfectly imperfect. At its base, fern fronds unfurl in slow spirals, reaching toward the branches as if they recognize kin. A strand of ivy begins its climb, tender green tendrils curling around the wood, winding upward in search of sunlight. As the vines weave through the tripod, it becomes both structure and story. You can see the hand that chose each branch, the eye that balanced their angles, the knot that holds them in tension and harmony. There's something ancient in this simple engineering, something that taps into a primal satisfaction of building with what the earth has given. It feels like making a shelter, a hut, a totem. And as ivy leaves thicken, the tripod turns into a living tower, casting dappled shade below. This vertical accent draws the gaze upward, making the space seem bigger than it is. It gives climbing plants a new path and gives you a new view. You might tuck a moss tray nearby, within the tripod's shadow, to create a world at the base while life climbs above. And with that small forest within a drawer, the garden's layers keep unfolding. Seven, Root View moss tray in a vintage drawer. At waist height, an old wooden drawer holds a tiny forest. Once part of a desk or dresser, it now rests on a table in the garden, lined with pebbles and filled with moss. If you look from the side, you can see the layers. A base of smooth stones, a thin line of soil, and above it a soft green blanket of life. Tiny roots weave through the stones, a delicate lace hidden beneath the surface. Above, miniature succulents dot the scene like trees in a landscape painting. The drawer's handles are tarnished, its corners worn, but these signs of age make it feel like a memory preserved. It invites you to lean in and imagine yourself small enough to walk its paths. Each tuft of moss is a hill, each pebble a mountain, each crack in the wood a canyon. Children will see fairy kingdoms. Adults will see the comfort of things reused and repurposed with care. This root view tray is more than decor. It's an ecosystem compressed into a glimpse. It shows how layers support life, how what is unseen is as vital as what is seen. After observing its tiny world, your gaze might shift to a nearby stone slab with a lantern, where shadows and light play with scale and invite the next quiet contemplation. 8. Shadow pocket with low lantern. In the late afternoon, when sunlight softens and shadows stretch, a small pocket of darkness becomes the most captivating. A flat stone, warmed by the day, hosts a low lantern whose flame dances with the breeze. Around this scene, moss and ferns lean inward, creating a natural frame that focuses your attention on the flicker. The contrast between light and shadow is gentle, not stark. It whispers rather than shouts. To sit beside this shadow pocket is to enter a different pace. The lantern's light is not bright enough to read by, but it is enough to hold the eye and calm the mind. It calls to mind evenings around a campfire, telling stories and watching sparks fly up into the night. Here, in a garden corner, that feeling is distilled into something you can walk past every day. The lantern's base is anchored by a driftwood piece, its form casting a long, curved shadow that shifts as the flame moves. This moment in the garden teaches that darkness has its own beauty when given context and care. It also serves as a transition from the rooted worlds of moss trays and trellis to the defined borders of planters, where the glow of recycled glass will guide you along the edges of new growth. Nine. Bottle edge border around a driftwood planter. Along the outer rim of a driftwood planter, a row of bottles stands sentinel. These bottles, cut in half and pressed into the soil, create a glass border that delineates space without erecting a barrier. Their rounded tops catch the light and reflect it back onto the plants they protect. Inside the planter, a tangle of succulents, herbs, and blooming annuals spills over the edge, softened by the line of glass and softened further by moss at their base. The planter itself is a hollow log or assembled planks of driftwood, bleached and textured from years in the elements. Its rough, organic shape contrasts with the smooth, manufactured curves of the bottles. Together, they tell a story about what is thrown away and what endures, and how the two can meet to form something beautiful. There is a practicality to this border. It keeps soil in place and marks where the planter ends. But it is also playful, reminiscent of bottle trees and childhood crafts. When you walk past on a sunny day, the glass glows softly, each bottle capturing a different hue from the garden. At twilight, when the lanterns begin to burn low and shadows lengthen, the glass still holds a memory of light. This illuminated edge will lead your eyes upward to the next hanging installation, where tin cans will sparkle like stars suspended on a driftwood rail. Hanging driftwood rail with tin can tealights. Suspend a driftwood branch between two posts or from a pergola beam, and hang tin cans along its length like notes on a wind chime. Each can has been cleaned, painted, or left raw, then carefully punctured with patterns of holes. When twilight falls and tea lights are placed inside, these simple cylinders transform into lanterns, casting starlight patterns onto the ground. The light is soft but lively. It dances when the breeze moves the cans, making the shadows sway. The sound of tin touching tin is gentle, like faint bells. The sight of glowing dots moving through the air is magical, like fireflies on a string. This hanging rail brings a vertical element to the garden that draws the eyes upward and creates a sense of height. It also brings the night garden to life. The cans are easy to switch out for seasonal colors or patterns, and the branch itself can be replaced when the wood weathers beyond use. There is something deeply satisfying about taking a discarded object, punching it with patience, and seeing it become a source of light. The rhythm of making holes, the anticipation of how they will glow, all become part of the story of your garden. And just as these tin can stars hover above, the next idea brings you back down to earth, to a pedestal made of fragments and pebbles supporting a single piece of found wood. (11) Pebble plus Tile Offcut Pedestal. Sometimes the most ordinary materials become the foundation of something extraordinary. A pedestal built from pebbles and broken tile pieces is one such transformation. At the base, round stones nestle together like riverbed cousins. Above them, shards of ceramic tile are laid in a mosaic of color and shape. The pattern might be random or radiating. Either way, the broken edges fit like a puzzle that only this pedestal could solve. Mortar holds it all together, but what holds your eye is the way light plays across the textured surface. Atop this handmade base, you place a piece of driftwood, perhaps a twisting branch or a small stump. It stands taller because of its pedestal, elevated both literally and in significance. There is something ceremonial about it, almost like offering a gift to the garden. The pedestal protects the wood from damp ground and sets it apart from the surrounding growth. It is both functional and poetic, a stage built from fragments. The act of assembling this pedestal is meditative, choosing each pebble, pressing each shard, witnessing how broken things combine to support something whole. It becomes a lesson in patience and imperfection. As you step back to admire it, you hear the faint sound of water in a clay bowl nearby, a tiny ripple that will make you lean closer to hear the voice of movement in a space designed for stillness. (12) USB teaspoon water ripple in a clay bowl. Water has a voice, even in its smallest expression. In a shallow clay bowl, a hidden USB pump sends up a gentle fountain the size of a teaspoon. The water breaks the surface tension, creating ripples that radiate outward to the lip of the bowl, then back again. It's the sound of whispers, of water over pebbles on a very small scale. Surrounding the bowl, smooth stones keep it grounded, while a veil of moss softens the edges. The clay itself is earthy and cool to the touch, its glaze matte and rustic. The combination of digital convenience, a USB power source, and a natural vessel feels unexpectedly harmonious. It allows the smallest corners of your garden to have movement and sound, to invoke a sense of stillness through gently repeating waves. It could sit on a bench, beside a pedestal, or beneath a trellis, adding a layer of life that draws you in with your ears before your eyes. This tiny water feature encourages you to lean close, to watch the ripples catch light and reflect leaves overhead. It invites you to rest your hands on the bowl's rim and close your eyes. And as you lift your gaze, you might notice a branch on the wall repurposed as a hook, ready to hold a lantern or a basket of clippings, reminding you that utility and beauty can hang side by side. (13) Gnarled-Branch wall hooks. A wall or fence becomes more than a boundary when adorned with branches that reach out like hands. Select gnarled pieces of wood with natural bends and forks, clean them, and seal them lightly. Mounted on the wall, each branch creates a hook where you can hang a lantern, a basket of fresh herbs, or a straw hat. The irregular shapes add character, making each hook unique. Some extend outward like invitations, others curl back toward the wall as if holding a secret. These hooks are as functional as they are sculptural. They keep tools at the ready, allow you to display dried flowers, and offer a place to rest a watering can or a piece of rope. The act of hanging becomes more mindful because you must choose where to place things, balancing weight and shape on the living lines of wood. Over time, the hooks may weather and gray, blending even more into the fence or wall, as though they grew from it. The sight of branches emerging from the vertical plane also plays with perception. It brings the forest to your eye level, and it breaks up the flatness of a wall with organic movement. As you hang a lantern here and a tea towel there, you might glance down to the path beneath your feet, where moss creeps around uneven bricks to make each step a small discovery. (14) Mossed brick steppers, asymmetric pair. Two bricks, placed not in a straight line but in a slight stagger, can change the way you move through a space. This pair of moss steppers invites you to slow down, to adjust your stride to their rhythm. Each brick is old and uneven, its surface rough in places, chipped in others. Moss grows along the seams and creeps over the edges, blurring the line between man-made and natural. These bricks might have come from a demolished building or an abandoned garden path, now given a second life. Walking on them, you feel the texture underfoot and see the contrast between the red clay and green moss. The asymmetry creates interest and suggests a story. Perhaps the bricks mark the way to a secret corner or a hidden bench. They encourage you to look at the ground, to notice small details and microecosystems. Tiny plants might have rooted in the cracks, and insects might find refuge in the damp spaces beneath. As the garden evolves, these bricks will settle further into the earth, their moss thickening and their edges softening. They will always remind you that paths do not need to be straight to lead somewhere meaningful. And when you step off these bricks and onto the windowsill ledge, you find a different kind of balance. Slim bottles holding delicate fronds above the horizon of the window. (15) Window ledge driftwood with mini bottle vases. On the windowsill where inside and outside meet, a piece of driftwood serves as a bridge. It is long and smooth, with natural grooves that cradle tiny bottles, each no bigger than a child's thumb. These glass vases hold single stems, a fern frond here, a small daisy there, perhaps a sprig of rosemary or a clipping of lavender. The vases are clear, catching and refracting light so that a simple stem becomes a prism of green. Every time you walk by the window, you see how the light changes the scene. Morning sunlight streams through, casting shadows of the stems onto the wall. Afternoon light warms the driftwood. Evening light turns the glass golden. It is a living still life, one you can rearrange each week with new clippings from the garden. The driftwood, once tossed by waves, now sits steady above brick steppers and potted herbs, connecting the wild with the domestic. There is a quiet poetry in placing something as rugged as driftwood in such a refined context. It shows how something found and something delicate can harmonize. When guests admire it, they often ask where it was purchased. You can smile and tell them it was made from what washed ashore and what grew outside your door. And as dusk falls, the next object, a bottle jar glowing like a firefly, will beckon you deeper into the garden. (16) Bottle firefly jar, solar lids. As the sun sinks below the trees, you notice a jar tucked between stones and moss begin to glow. It looks as if a cluster of fireflies has taken up residence, their tiny lights flickering and pulsing in the gathering dusk. In truth, it is a repurposed glass bottle fitted with a solar lid. During the day, this lid stores sunlight. At night, it releases it through a string of miniature LEDs inside the jar. The effect is gentle, playful, an echo of summer nights chasing lightning bugs. The bottle sits in the garden like a lantern that needs no tending. Its glow is more subtle than electric lights, more magical than candles. It can be placed along a pathway, hung from a tree, or nestled in a fairy corner. When you peer through the glass, you see the wire twisting like a vine, yet the overall illusion is of creatures swirling in a tiny universe. Children are captivated, adults are charmed. It makes you want to linger outside a little longer, to watch the transition from day to night. This simple upcycle speaks to the joy of holding light in your hands, of harnessing the sun to bring sparkle to the dark. And as you follow the soft glows through the garden, you might pass under an arch of twigs that frames a pebble path, beckoning you toward the next whimsical passageway. (17) Twig arch portal over a planter path. Sometimes what separates one space from another is not a wall but an invitation. An archway made from slender twigs marks a transition in your garden, not into a different world, but into a different mood. Two lengths of twig, bent gently and lashed together, form the main curve. Smaller branches are woven across to give structure and rhythm. The arch is light, almost airy. It sways gently when touched but stands firm against wind. Beneath it, a pebble path wins its way, bordered by planters filled with herbs or annuals. Walking under the arch makes you feel as if you are stepping through a portal. It's a small change in height, a gentle enclosure, but it is enough to shift your perspective. Above, the twigs create a pattern against the sky. Below, the pebbles crunch softly. Children might run through, feeling as if they have found a secret passage. Adults might slow down, aware of moving from one chapter of the garden's story to the next. The arch can be adorned seasonally, hung with twinkling jars in summer, draped with dried vines in autumn. And at night, the glow of nearby firefly jars makes it seem as if the arch leads to a land of gently pulsing lights. On the far side, a tiny cairn of stones marks the way, grounding the path in something solid and timeless. (18) Mini Stone Cairn Wayfinder. Some journeys require only a few stones to mark their path. A mini cairn, stacked carefully at the junction of two garden paths, serves as a wayfinder and a meditation. Smooth stones, flat and round, are balanced one atop another. They may be collected from a river or beach, each one chosen for its size and feel. The act of stacking them is part of the pleasure. Feeling their weight, finding their balance point, listening to the soft click when they settle into place. This small tower stands quietly, unassuming yet noticeable. It is not tall, it might reach no higher than your knee, but in the garden, it becomes a landmark. The cairn suggests, turn here, or take this way, but it also suggests mindfulness. In many cultures, cairns are markers left by travelers. To build one is to join a lineage of people who walked before you, who left stones so others would not lose their way. In your garden, it may be purely decorative, yet its symbolism resonates. Over time, lichens may dust the stones, and tiny plants may seed in the cracks. The cairn will weather, but it will also endure. And beside it, a shard of clay pressed into the soil will remind you of names and growth, the next detail of identification etched by hand. (19) Clay shard plant labels, Wabi-Sabi script. Among the plants, words take root. Broken pieces of clay pots, once discarded, are transformed into labels that call your herbs and flowers by name. Each shard is washed and smoothed, then inscribed with a simple script: basil, mint, lavender. The letters may not be perfectly aligned. They may waver slightly or vary in size. This imperfection is part of their charm. Wabi-Sabi in practice, a celebration of the handmade and the transient. As you press the shards into the soil near each plant, they look like little tombstones or offerings. They remind you where seeds were sown, where roots grow, and where the boundary of one flavor ends and another begins. They also invite anyone passing through to bend down and read, to engage more deeply with the garden. Over time, the lettering may fade slightly, and the shards may chip further, but you can always refresh them or enjoy the weathering as part of their story. The act of writing the names is itself grounding. It connects you to what you're growing and what you're tending. It also sets the stage for the next structural element, a simple metal pin and driftwood combination that holds a plant in place and invites it to climb beyond the labels. (20) Driftwood plus Rebar pin planter. Within a terracotta pot, a piece of driftwood stands upright, not on its own, but anchored by a slender rod of rebar. The metal pin is driven down through the wood and into the soil, securing the branch like a post. Around its base, vines begin to curl and climb, using the wood as a natural trellis. The contrast is striking, the straight, utilitarian line of the rebar against the organic curves of the driftwood, the cold iron next to the warm, weathered grain. This combination shows how very different materials can support each other. The rebar gives the wood stability, while the wood gives the rebar a softer appearance. Together, they create a vertical element that makes the planter feel taller and more dynamic. The vine that ascends the branch brings life and movement, covering the pin gradually as leaves unfurl and stems twist. Moss at the base keeps moisture in and completes the composition. This planter is a study in balance, balance between industrial and natural, between strength and grace. It also serves as a reminder that sometimes a simple pin is all that's needed to hold something meaningful upright. And just as this pin lends support, the next idea will lend patina, adding age and character to metal accents through a simple brew of tea, vinegar, and steel wool. (21) Tea, vinegar, steel wool patina accents. Metal is not usually the first material you think of in a natural garden, but when aged properly, it harmonizes beautifully with wood and stone. Using a mixture of strong brewed tea, vinegar, and a piece of steel wool left to dissolve, you can create a homemade patina that transforms shiny metal into something that looks as if it has been exposed to the elements for years. Coat a piece of plain steel or iron with this solution, wait a few hours, and watch as the metal darkens, warms, and develops depth. These patinated accents can become hooks, frames, edging, or small sculptures in your garden. They look like heirlooms salvaged from an old farm, even if they were just purchased at a hardware store. The process is simple, but the effect is profound. Instead of gleaming and standing out, the metal blends in, echoing the tones of driftwood and the soil. It picks up orange and brown hues that complement stone and moss. The act of applying the patina is itself a ritual, like brewing tea or mixing a potion. As the vinegar smell dissipates and the metal slowly changes, you feel a sense of transformation. These pieces become more than functional. They become part of the narrative of age and time in your garden. A thin black line painted behind them will soon enhance this contrast, deepening the greens around and guiding your eye along a subtle path. (22) Matte black contrast line. Sometimes the smallest stroke can change the entire painting. In your garden, a thin line of matte black paint, carefully applied on a board, a wall, or even along the edge of a planter, can make greens brighter and textures more defined. The black does not shout, it whispers, drawing the eye along its length and making the surrounding elements pop. It is like eyeliner for your plants, adding definition without drawing attention to itself. You might paint a narrow strip along the bottom of a raised bed or behind a row of moss to give depth. Or you might use a black strip to divide two textures, stone from wood, gravel from soil. The matte finish absorbs light rather than reflecting it, which means it sits quietly in the background. The effect is subtle but sophisticated. It brings a modern touch to the rustic, bridging natural elements with a clean, intentional line. Applying this contrast line is quick. The impact is lasting. It encourages you to see your garden as a composition, to consider not just the objects but the space around them. As you step back and see how this dark ribbon sharpens the focus on your driftwood and patinated metal, you'll appreciate the small details that transform. And then, perhaps, you will see another detail shining. Small bottle caps catching the light, used as rivets on a garden board. (23) Bottle cap rivet details. Sometimes, small discarded objects catch the eye and ask to be noticed again. Bottle caps, with their ridged edges and tiny logos, can become decorative rivets when screwed or glued onto wood. Arranged in a line along the edge of a planter or scattered like stars across a board, they add texture and a hint of metallic sparkle. If you choose caps with worn paint or slight rust, they blend even better with a rustic aesthetic. These details are subtle. They might not be seen at first glance, but when sunlight hits them or when a hand brushes past, they reveal themselves. They tell a story of upcycling on the smallest scale, of making use of what might otherwise be thrown away. And they create a tactile experience. Your fingers can feel the raised pattern as you run them along a plank's edge. Adding bottle cap rivets is like adding punctuation to the sentences of your garden. They emphasize certain lines, draw attention to certain corners, and lead the eye along a path. They pair nicely with matte black lines and patinated metal, complementing their industrial feel. As you admire these tiny studs, you may notice the glint of light in a corner pool of mirror shards, a small reflective surface that captures sky and leaf alike. '24. Pocket Mirror Shard Pool. Water is not the only way to capture light in the garden. A small depression lined with mirror shards can create the illusion of a pool without moisture. Pieces of broken mirror are laid down in a mosaic, some large, some tiny. Pebbles around the edge hold them in place and soften the transition between reflection and ground. When the sun hits the shards, they sparkle like ripples. When clouds move overhead, their forms dance across the silvered glass. This pocket mirror pool reflects not just the sky but the plants around it. Leaves, flowers, and branches appear doubled, inverted, shimmering. It draws you in, makes you crouch down to see your face or the underside of a leaf from a new angle. At night, the pool catches the light from nearby lanterns and solar jars, scattering it like stars scattered on the ground. Creating a reflective pool from mirror fragments is a lesson in making beauty from brokenness. It is a meditation on perspective, how the same piece of glass can show many different things depending on where you stand. It sits quietly, adding depth and brilliance to the garden. And when you look up from the glinting shards, you might see a basket by the door, soft linen and woven reeds bridging your indoor comforts with the outdoor sanctuary. '25. Linen Basket Bridge, Indoor-Outdoor. At the threshold between house and garden sits a woven basket filled with folded linen. Its presence is both practical and poetic. The basket holds a soft throw for cool evenings, a cushion to tuck behind your back, perhaps a book or a sketch pad. It is the bridge between indoor comfort and outdoor freedom. When you pick up the basket, you carry a piece of home into nature. When you return it, you bring the scent of lavender and earth back inside. The basket itself is simple, wicker or rattan, with a handle that feels good in the hand. The linen is undyed or lightly patterned, its fibers natural and tactile. It invites touch. It suggests that you might spread the fabric on a bench or on the ground, curl up, and spend a moment watching shadows move, listening to water ripple, feeling the texture of pebbles under your feet. Having this basket ready encourages spontaneous pauses. It reminds you to take your tea outside or to bring a handful of moss indoors to admire. It blurs the line between interior and exterior, making the garden an extension of the living room. It also closes the circle of ideas we've explored, from driftwood sculptures to reflective pools, by reminding us that the true magic of a garden is not just in how it looks, but in how it makes you feel when you inhabit it fully, with all your senses engaged and your spirit at ease. Tiny gardens, big feelings. If one idea sparked your next corner, like this video, subscribe for weekly trash, treasure episodes, and share your remake with a photo or short clip. Tell me which number you tried. I'll pin a viewer remix in the next upload. Until then, may your driftwood find the right shadow, and your moss find the right light.